This is Steve Levy from ESPN, and you're listening to Missin Curfew.
Fella,
My man.
how we doing, buddy?
Awesome.
It's a wrap. The season's a wrap, but I bumped into Steve Levy at game 1 of the Stanley Cup final, and he said, hey, Obs, big fan of Missin Curfew. Where's the up dog? I say he's coming in for game 2. He's like, I DM'd you. I'm like, I don't check my DMs anymore, fella. I mean, there's no hot chicks in there, so what's the point? But great guy. So we thought we'd get him on here before we officially head into the sunset of the summer here. Fuck, you got a busy summer coming up.
Yeah,
eh?
I do. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, a lot of overbacks.
Listen, Steve Levy to me is a guy, I think back of watching games when I first came to the US, early 19.
Yeah.
And fucking just the voice and the passion and the charisma he has on TV. It's awesome. And what an honor to have him on our pod. By the way, what an honor to bump into him and him shoot the shit with you and sound excited to be on the pod. Yeah. He just got a voice that's, it makes you kind of feel comfortable and brings you into the moment, right?
Yeah, he's a veteran too.
Yeah.
We've both commented on his hair, great hair.
He doesn't put anything in.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time and he brings a flair to the set for sure. But yeah, it was cool bumping into him. I met him years ago on the Entourage set, but it was cool just to hear him like, yeah, I'm Missin Curfew and the Updog. I like what you guys are doing. So we thought we'd bring him on. Here he comes.
I think the fans are going to love this one.
Steve Levy, fella. Welcome back to Missin Curfew. Updog bumped into this beauty at game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. He had the suit on. He was looking sharp. Met him years ago on the Entourage set, which I want to bring up. But we're a big fan of ESPN and what they've done for hockey. And this guy is one of the reasons we were happy hockey's back on ESPN.
Big fan of his hair too, by the way.
Great hair. We might have to ask him what he puts in that. So Steve Levy, thank you for joining Missin Curfew. Yeah, buddy. You could go no bucket. You could go no bucket and warm up if you're in the NHL.
I would have liked that. I would have been one of those guys who at least attempted it anyway. And no product either, guys. This is like water. I don't put anything in my hair either. This is au naturel.
Well, now I'm really jealous. That you could just put a little water. You're like my boy, the Updog. He would just put a little water in there. I'd have to put the gel in before warm up. I was that guy,
Yep.
Steve.
So a little different than Barry Melrose, I'm sure, back in the day. A little different. Your production manager is probably like, man, we got to work on this Barry's hair so much, and Steve's is always just perfect.
Think of the budget for Barry's hair gel, right? Back in the day, all these years and all that. He could wear it. I think he might have played without a helmet even. He's so old,
Yeah, I think he did for sure. But Steve, thank you so much for taking the time, buddy. We know you're busy. Let's start with your T-shirt there, the New York Jets T-shirt. We saw it right off the top. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers. Exciting times for you and the Jets, Jets.
So you've been in the business a long time like I have, and you really don't root for teams anymore, right? It's laundry, right? Guys change uniforms or helmets or whatever it is. You just start rooting for good guys or good people or friends of yours. But I can't shake the New York Jets thing, man. It's probably because they haven't had any success in my lifetime. So, I grew up in that New York metropolitan area. I was at the Garden for the Rangers winning. I was at Shea when the Mets won the World Series and all that. And so I'd really like to be able to take my dad, who I'm still fortunate enough that he's with us in good health, and take my 2 young sons and take them to a Super Bowl and see it. And, who knows? Maybe this is there's lots of optimism, but I've lived through optimism before with the Jets, and it hasn't panned out. But I do still live and die with the team. And really, like, at the end of a game, we're in the third quarter, I'm pinching myself. Like, you're a 58-year-old man. Why are you getting so upset on a holding flag? And I just can't shake it. I don't know.
Steve, I got to ask you real quick. One of the things that your network did, ESPN, Once Upon a Time in Queens, that documentary to me was unbelievable, buddy. Like, so you obviously lived through that. You were a Mets fan when that happened, because that documentary, those guys were rock stars.
So first of all, that 30 for 30, say what you will about ESPN, that 30 for 30 is among the best things we do, regardless of the topic. I've never heard anybody say that 30 for 30 was off or it was bad. Like, they're all legendary. And that one was particularly good. What happened, behind the stands and in the clubhouse, and those guys were fighting they had more fighting majors than hockey teams do right now, right? Ray Knight's pounding Eric Davis and these guys, and Backman and Dykstra, and they were dirty, they were a mess, they were close to disgusting, whatever was on their uniforms, and, the dip and everything just flying, and so that was sort of a rock and roll baseball, which you really don't see or get anymore. So those were good times. I was in the Shea Stadium for the Buckner game.
Oh, wow.
And that was wild. And then people forget Game 7 of that series was supposed to be on Sunday night, as most of them are, and it was rained out. And it got pushed to Monday. And so I was in the upper deck for that one, too. So that's really cool. It was a great experience. And, yeah, that was my team. And I lived through the bad days. And I'm sure we'll transition to Vegas. But, that's why I get people around the NHL being, ticked off about Vegas's quick success. Like, I was in the upper deck at Shea for the Mets when nobody was there. And the same thing with the Rangers, that 54-year streak, right? And here comes Vegas. Doop, 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 doop. Hey, welcome to the NHL. We're in the Stanley Cup final. And now 6 years later, we win it. So my kids are giving me a hard time still, like with the Jet thing. We live in sort of central Connecticut. You can find a lot of Giants and Patriots stuff here. Not a lot of Jets. One of my sons said to me, "Dad, I'll give him one more year." He's 11. So, but it builds character. And so I'd like to think the Levys have a lot of character anyway.
I just want to say, Lenny Dykstra, have you watched this? Lenny Dykstra steals the show. He's like, the manager says, "You're up, Lenny." He says, "It's about time you want to fucking win." And then, Steve, were you one of the guys that they stole the grass? Were you out there? Were you one of the guys stealing the grass, Steve, back in the day? Because they ripped the field up, remember?
I didn't get on the field. My best story from that, though, was 86. I got a press credential. So I was in the press box, sort of. There's so much media at the World Series, they have what they call an auxiliary press box. And so I was in the press level, but out beyond the foul pole, okay? I'm in fair territory in right field, which tells you how far I was out right in the outfield. So, the Buckner game is over. The Red Sox are winning that World Series. And when the ball rolls through Buckner's legs, I am the only person, I would say, within 100 yards. Like everybody, the stories were written. Everybody was already downstairs waiting for the locker room to open to get the quotes. And I must look like a total lunatic, and there's no cheering in the press box and all that stuff. But I don't know, I'm 18, 19, 20 or something. And I'm going wild, but all by myself. It was a wild scene. And Game 7 was cool because I got to go as a fan and not have to get dressed up, and I could cheer my brains out. So, but that was a lot of fun. And I'm my history is, a lot of people think of me as a Boston guy. So I grew up in New York. But after coming to ESPN, I realized after 5 years, I didn't have to necessarily live in Bristol. So I moved to Boston for 13 years. So I kind of trained. All my best buddies are still in Boston. We got a bar there and all that stuff. And so I I'm really like a Boston guy as an adult. Yet I still have those New York roots, so I got the mix of the accent and the attitude and all that stuff.
It makes sense. Well, all our buddies are Boston guys too. It just makes sense. They're all the same breed.
Yeah, it was just crazy in that Game 6, the Buckner game. Like Updog, they had the locker room ready to go, like party time. The ball goes through the leg. They had to run in, take all the shit out, all the champagne out, and fucking like it was over. It was an amazing series. It was amazing.
I think they even put it on the scoreboard. I think they even gave the MVP award on the scoreboard. It flashed in Game 6.
Roger Clemens went in and shaved for the fucking post-game celebration, and they fucking blew it.
Right.
Why don't we just stick right here with the celebration? So you were saying you're at in New York for Messier's Stanley Cup parade. The videos coming out of these Vegas boys right now. Thoughts on maybe who is going harder? Those boys back in New York ripping through Manhattan, or these guys that just won in Las Vegas of all places? Because some of these videos are all time. I mean, the William Karlsson thing, I was laughing for hours.
To me, the all-timer is still going to be Ovechkin and what the Capitals did.
Yeah.
when they ran through Vegas, by the way, right? Beating Las Vegas that year in 2018. I think the advantage that Messi and those guys had was, the lack of social media, not so many cameras and videos around them. And in Manhattan, you can hide too. You know what I mean? That's a big island, And for Vegas, it's Vegas's first one, And I said this on the air, like, the Raiders might win the Super Bowl one day, and that'll be cool and everything, but it won't be the same, right? The Raiders, they came from someplace else. The Golden Knights, their history, that's their hashtag, Vegas born and all that stuff. So I think it's really special, and I say enjoy it. It's so remarkable to me how some guys win the cup and some guys don't. Like great players who are in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? They just don't have the supporting cast or whatever, don't get there. And how some fourth line guys can win multiple Stanley Cups because they're in now look, they contribute, and fourth line has never been more important than it was, and Vegas is a great example of that fourth line winning this Stanley Cup. But it is remarkable. So my point being that if you get a chance to win it, go enjoy it, man. You deserve it. You earned it. It is such an impossible trophy to win. And I said, let it fly. And good for Vegas. I'm a big Vegas guy anyway. You don't have to ask me twice to go out there, even if there's no sports events. I go in the summer when it's 110, you know what I mean, outside, no problem at all. So I say good for those guys. Enjoy it.
It's funny you say that, Steve, because we had breakfast this morning, and every time someone wins it, and, back when Gronk would win it, you can get as drunk as you want and do whatever you want and be like Carlson at the parade, and no one's going to say a word to you because you won the Stanley Cup or the NFL. Like, that to me has got to be such a good feeling. Just be like, I can do whatever I want out here tonight, and no one's going to say a thing.
How about the poor lady in the black T-shirt on stage trying to grab Carlson, right? Like, that's somebody's job. I felt for her for a second, right? Like, she's probably got to keep the show running. At first, I thought she was grabbing Wild Bill because she was afraid he was going to fall off the stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it became a time thing, and she's just trying to cut him off and try to get the microphone to somebody else. And so, we all got jobs to do. I get it.
And Steve, we all know that T-Mobile's a great atmosphere, but I bumped into you at game one, and to me, that atmosphere was louder than I've ever seen T-Mobile. Like, talk me through that experience for you seeing game one. I'm not sure if you're there for game two, but it was the buzz in that building before the Stanley Cup final was something that I don't think I've ever felt.
So it's always been great there. I mean, they've always done that right, and it's really ingenious, guys. You look around the NHL, 5 minutes into the first period, most places, the seats are not full. Right? They're either in the clubs or they're stuck in parking or whatever it might be. And Vegas's pregame show on the ice, the theatrics they do is ingenious, right? Because people want to see that stuff. So you're in the building an hour early, and therefore you're buying soda and popcorn and T-shirts and jerseys and beers. Like, it's win-win for everyone. So I think it starts from that. The building definitely felt different to me as the series progresses, a certain buzz. And again, in a building with no history, with no real tradition, right? I think the fans were just so excited. And where people missed the boat on Vegas, if you remember when the talk was about the team coming and finally they were going to come, it was all about the transplants, right? Hey, every visiting team is going to have the building's going to be 50-50 because it's all the visitors. And it's not like that. It was not like that at all, right? You saw a few Florida Panthers fans, and throughout the postseason, you see a few visiting sweaters, but not a lot. They are all in on the Golden Knights. Everywhere I went all week long, asking for tickets and how do I sneak them in and all that stuff. And so they got a great start. Vegas will be there forever, and I think they're going to be successful. Listen, the Oakland A's are coming too, boys, right? Yeah. We know that. And the NBA will not be far behind. I promise you that. So I think the NHL gets full marks for going first too, right? They dipped their toe in the water first. They took the risk, whatever risk that might have been, and it's really paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love how whether it's a card dealer or your taxi driver or the guy you're grabbing a hot dog off in the middle of the street, they're all like Vegas Golden Knight fans. Yeah. Whether they were before or not, they feel like that's their team. So
and I'm with Steve. Like, when people, Uppy was still in the league. I think I was just maybe finished out in the league when Vegas was going to come, and I thought, yeah, it'll be great. Like, when the Leafs come, I'm sure all their fans will come. Oilers, Vancouver, Rangers. It'll be a great place for visiting teams to come. And that was not the case at all, right? From day one, basically. This city, the way they've supported this hockey club. And like you said, Steve, it's because it's homegrown and they started there.
Yeah. And you can't get a ticket. And I have friends who have some season tickets, and when they sell it, it pays for like their entire season, And look around the league, right? Florida and Tampa, when the Canadian clubs go down there, or the Rangers or Bruins, it's, they take over the place. And that's not the case in Vegas. Now, look, in fairness, let's see they sustain it. Let's see them do it in 10 years and 20 years from now. But OB, on that first chance meeting with you and me in the fancy club suite area, have you checked your direct messages yet? Do you even know you have DMs? Because I DM'd you.
Yeah.
And I was saying and I got lucky. You did it with smarts. I got lucky. I picked the Panthers back in October to win the Stanley Cup, which I thought was a pretty good deal. However, then I find out that OB, 2 years ago, picked it to be Vegas and Florida to actually meet the Stanley Cup final. I was like, wow. So, before we'd really spoken, I DM'd you and I never heard back. And then, boom, I bump into you in the suite. And here we are.
Yeah, well, I got to be honest, Steve. My DMs aren't what they used to be. You know, they used to be when I was playing, I would look at them and I'd have some good surprises, typically some females. Now, if it's usually someone just saying, "Oh, Brian, you dumb fuck, you suck," or something. So I don't check them anymore, but I'm glad I got to bump into you.
I'll send you a picture too, but it's going to have my Jet shirt on, okay?
By the
only
way,
picture you get from me.
You were rubbing the genie's belly on that one. That was quite the call back early in the summer.
And that was before they got our boy Matty, before they got Chucky. I knew everyone forgot about how good Vegas's D were, right? They missed the playoffs last year. I figured Jack Eichel with a full training camp, a full season, their 6D are arguably the best in the league, 1 through 6. And if they got some goaltending, I thought Vegas could be a team to beat. And then I just thought Bill Zito would make a little splash, and sure enough, he go against Chucky, and the rest is history. So that was kind of a lucky guess there. But I always liked Vegas.
That D was the story to me of the series. And when I go D, I mean 5 and 6, like Hagen, White Cloud, right? Those guys critical spots, last 90 seconds up a goal, and Butch has 5 and 6 on the ice. Remarkable.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny, and we live in a salary cap era, right? And we all know Vegas is up against it, and they don't have a goaltender. And you know, Riley Smith name came up again, or Alex Martinez. And I said, and I like Riley Smith, but they both make $5 million. I'm not touching that 1 through 6D. I'm bringing them back again next year. No disrespect to Riley Smith or whoever it's going to be up there, but that 1 through 6, don't mess with that chemistry that they got going.
Yeah, the goalie thing is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what they do there. I think they love Logan Thompson. I think they want him to be the guy. And because of that, what you mentioned, the salary cap, he's cheap, right? I think he's under $1 million bucks.
$785 or something crazy.
Yeah, for a starting goalie, right? Now, he's got to perform and play that and do it for a whole season.
Stevie, so I brought this up right before, but you're going on 30 years with ESPN. I don't want to age you because you still look young and handsome.
Good, bud.
But bring me back to, like, you know, for you, you're Mr. Hockey with ESPN. You always have been. The voice, the knowledge. You've called some epic games, some long ones. What is it about the sport of hockey that was attractive to you and that gave you some passion and pride to talk about it nationwide?
So look, I'll be honest with you guys. First of all, it's always been my first love. I grew up, my 4 years of high school were on Long Island. The 4 years the Islanders won the Cups. Okay, that great dynasty. Now that being said, I was the only Ranger fan in the school on Long Island, so I took a lot of heat and a lot of abuse. I just always loved the game, and I thought it separated me in our industry. When I got to ESPN, you know, look, quite frankly, in the States, you know, everybody does football, basketball, and baseball. So if you could pronounce a Russian hockey name, like you were already a cut above in there, and you know, like Monday Night Football was always a dream, and I was really lucky to achieve that. But there's only one seat, right? There's only one seat, and in hockey, you know, we had a bunch of seats. We had all the games, all season long, 4 rounds of the playoffs. So there were many more opportunities for a hockey lover like myself to get in and get on the air. And I was lucky to be around a lot of great people. Started my relationship with Barry Melrose there. Actually, the night he got fired by the Kings. And this was my first Stanley Cup in the 30 without Barry. So he'll be back next season, all that stuff. He's fine. But so that was a little difficult, but the people in hockey are the best. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. The people in the dressing room and management and the PR staff and on the ice and all that. And again, I'm somebody who knows because I've covered all 4 big pro sports. And so it's the guys, it's the game itself, it's the atmosphere. And I've been lucky to have this great seat. And, you know, when we lost the rights there for, I don't know, 15, 16 years, like that was a tough go. Like we'd still push to do the highlights on SportsCenter, but it wasn't the same. We didn't have the games, right? And we just show up at the Stanley Cup final and try to keep that streak alive. And so we were able to do that. So, but a lot of people at ESPN love it. Like, you know, you guys know Butchie and Barry and all that and Linda. But a lot of people like behind the scenes, like the camera people, the audience, everybody loves hockey in Bristol. And so we were so thrilled to get the rights back again.
Yeah, that's like right when I made the league. When I made the league, the games were on Versus and the OLN network or something like that. I remember I was living in the hotel. I go to dinner. I'm like, hey, can you put the hockey game on? They're like, we don't have the hockey. I'm like, it's the NHL here. Like, it was kind of a big blow to us when it wasn't on ESPN. Like, as players, we were bummed about it, and we always wanted to get back on ESPN. So when it finally happened, I was gone out of the league, but it was so big for the NHL.
Yeah, no, it was. And then just to follow up on that, like it's been a huge like home run for us having ESPN back, having TNT back. Steve, what are your thoughts on, you've been through the World Cup of Hockeys before and what that is to our sport globally? Call it globally, or call it just like right before the hockey season starts when the NFL is starting up and baseball is getting into their playoffs. But the World Cup of Hockey, to me and Obi, needs to come back because it's such an exciting time. We need to see the, McKinnon, Crosby, McDavid, like the all-star lineups playing for their own country. How do we implement that back? I know the talks with, call it Russia. They didn't want Russia in or whatever, but how do we get that World Cup of Hockey vibe back? And just how cool was that when you called those back in the day?
Yeah, it was great, and I've been to multiple, and to see best on best, and obviously, America versus Canada, I mean, just unbelievable. Every player is a superstar on the ice, and you saw teammates in fights, right, and teammates in skirmishes and all that, with playing for the pride of their country, and so it was intense, among the best hockey I've ever seen. I think we all want it back, right, man? I can't think anybody says, let's not do that anymore. For me, I'd kind of like to see it in the middle of the season. I feel like the All-Star Weekend has lost its luster, right?
Yeah.
It sort of has. I know why they do it. We have the property. I get it. There are business ramifications there. It's sponsorships. It's promises to buildings, new buildings, and all that. So there's a lot of financial reasons for it. But for the hockey fan or something to look forward to, and again, I'm not sure you can do it every year. Like maybe it's every 2 years. Something like that. But I think I'd like to see it in the middle of the season. I think you'd have more guys interested because if you put it in the front end of the season, then these top-notch superstar players have to cut their summers short. And probably a lot of guys aren't going to want to do that. And then to ramp up that quickly to play at the top of your game would also be very, very difficult. And you guys know better than I. So I think everybody would be in favor of it. It'd be great to bring it back. Love to have it on ESPN in some way. It was so entertaining. And again, I sort of feel like the skills competition and All-Star Weekend sort of lost its lust. You'd need a bigger break in the middle, right? And so, that's an issue with the amount of games we're playing at 82. I'd love to see the league cut down to like 72 regular season games. But again, there are financial ramifications, and I don't think the owners would ever go for that.
Yeah, and the time is now, right? They're talking maybe 2025 to do it. But like you look at the Stanley Cup final, you got Matty Tkachuk and Jack Eichel, two American-born players in the final. We all know about McDavid and McKinnon. Like, even if they could do a best of seven, maybe Canada versus US on ESPN or something, like, I don't know. I think the time's now. I'm with you in the middle of the season, but not that it's ever going to be the World Cup of Soccer, but I watched the World Cup of Soccer and I wasn't a soccer fan. Now I'll never miss one. So I just think there's an opportunity to get some fans out there that maybe still don't watch it, getting that best on best. But
and it's hard to exclude, look, we're in the toy department, right? We're in sports, so we don't get into the big global picture. I think it's hard to exclude Russia. And yet, based on what's going on in the real world, I understand it, right? I get it. But these Russian NHL players obviously have nothing to do with that.
Yeah. And
so it's sort of unfair to them. It's unfair to hockey fans who want to see the great Russian teams. How great would that be? So we got to figure out a way, I think, to be totally inclusive in that regard, and then figure out a way to get it done. But it would be great. I think, the stars all want to play in the Olympics, right? The guys all want to go. They don't seem to care where it is, what time zone. Everybody seems, if you're good enough, you seem to want to play in the Olympics. And I think all the players would feel the same way about the World Cup as well.
Steve, I got to ask you about the physicality of hockey, buddy. A lot of times in this podcast, I complain. I still complain. Although the playoffs, I thought, Sam Bennett, Matty Tkachuk, there was some physicality. But from where you started to where we are now, where are you with the physicality and more of a speed game now? Would you like to see a little bit more,
No question. I'm with you. And I know it's not a popular opinion anymore. I like fighting in hockey. I just do. And, there's a lot of, it's not my kid on the ice. I totally get it. I'm not talking about stick swinging. I'm not talking about big guy on small guy, but a couple heavyweights wanted to go. And I'm in favor of it. I think it's always been a factor in the game. I think it's been an important factor in the game. It can change the game in itself, that specific game. But the problem is you can't carry guys anymore as you guys on the roster. you can't. I don't know how much longer Ryan Reeves can hang around with the speed of the game. So can we get a combination? Can we get a mix? Can you get guys who can keep up, who can still throw them? But I do fear fighting will be outlawed in, I don't know, 5-10 years. It'll mean, you drop the gloves. It's a 1-game suspension, kicked out of that, something like that. And that'll probably put an end to it. So we're already seeing these guys hard to keep their roster spots. And I love, even if it's not the fight, it's the prospect. The chance you might see a fight can also be interesting and fun. Nobody's ever left their seat, right?
Yeah.
We talked earlier about pregame warm-ups. I was in the Garden for Domi and Probert, and the warm-ups were packed. That's a regular season game. So you remember the Tampa Calgary Stanley Cup final. Every series has a signature moment, I think. And to see Iginla and LeCavalier drop the mitts, it was great. And they're not, certainly not Vinny. He's not a fighter, but he was willing to go, right? You guys know better than I. All you got to do is be willing. Even if you lose the fight, your guys will give you plenty of love on the bench and in the dressing room. Just be willing to go. But I miss it. I miss the hitting. I hate the ticky-tack penalties. And I'm sitting there with Chelios and Messier, right? PK, and we're watching some of the penalty calls, and those guys lose their minds. They're throwing papers. The little tap on the hands. Guy drops his stick. We're calling that a slash. Didn't break the stick, just dropped the stick. And Messi and Cheli, just hang on to your stick. You know what I mean? Why is that a penalty? So there's definitely an old school versus new school, but I'm with you in that one.
I got to ask you about the Domi Probert. There was a buzz through the city of New York that day, wasn't there? Remind me, did Domi say something in the paper about being the champ or walk me through that again? But I remember the buzz in the city was out of control.
He didn't have to say anything. They had a fight at Joe Louis maybe a week earlier.
Yeah.
And Domi won. And Domi got the best of Proby at Joe Louis. And again, don't hold me to that. Could have been a week, maybe it was less. But then the rings just happened to be on the schedule. We're coming back to the Garden, and everybody knew. Matt, I want to quote Mess because I've asked Messi because Mess is in the room, right? And everybody knows it's coming. It's only a matter of time. Might have been the very first shift. I think they both started. But warm-ups were wild. Yeah. Imagine Madison Square Garden. Every seat is full for warm-ups. Nobody's ever there for warm-ups. And it was just, again, for a regular season game. So, listen, some of the romance of the game, the history of the game is surrounded by that, right? And the handshakes at the end of the 7-game war, that's kind of what hockey's all about. And I do miss that piece.
Steve, we got to play golf with Gretz and Mess last week. We played the Grove out in Florida in between games 3 and 4. And I'm from Alberta, right? I grew up not 2 hours from where Mess grew up, and obviously being an Oiler kid. And I'm going in all right, what's your handicaps? Mess is I'm a 3, right? I'm okay, we're straight up. And Gretz and Obi takes, they go straight up. But, talk a little bit about having him on your team, Mess, and a guy that you watched and idolized, I'm sure, when he was with the Rangers. And we all idolized the way he played, wore his heart on his sleeve, played tough. But your guys' chemistry, and I know Chelly just got let go, but what that's like to have a couple Hall of Famers on your squad and to chat hockey and to be laughing and getting the insight on all that, and just what that was like this year for you guys with PK.
So it is odd. Sometimes I have to check myself. Like Mess and I will text at 1 a.m. watching a West Coast game, and I'm only it's as simple as, hey, did you see that? From Mess or something like that. And if only I could tell my buddies that Mark Messier is texting me at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. And he watches everything, but he watches all the. And so that's pretty cool. And then then sometimes I forget about it. Figure, all right, we're just colleagues, buddies, and we're talking hockey like I would with anybody else. So the funniest part is, after our show ends, we'll go out to a local place in Bristol, Connecticut, right? And it's a little a little watering hole or a dive bar kind of thing, right? We're just having a couple, and the people who stroll in casually in Bristol, Connecticut are not expecting to see two of the greatest players in hockey history, right? And they're so regular, they do blend in. Chelly can blend in anywhere, right? He looks like, a regular guy, right? Mess, of course, he's got the forehead and the skull and everything. He stands out a lot, and he wears a hoodie or a hat to try to blend in himself. But they are regular guys, as most hockey superstars are, right? And that's the thing, You hear about Gretz, like, till the end of his career, he had a roommate. Like, what? On the
know.
road. Like,
That's crazy.
That just doesn't happen. Like, people can't wrap their minds around that, too. Right? Wayne Gretzky had a roommate. Wait a second. He had to share the remote control. Is that possible? So, but that's what makes hockey special. And they are genuine, regular guys who love hockey. And we'll miss Chelios a lot. Cheli just got caught up. His deal came to an end. He was great on TV, worked as hard as anyone. That's just sort of a sign in the times of our business right now. It's rough.
Steve, I got to ask you about PK. He's done a great job for you. His style. Are you going to maybe borrow his stylist next year? Do you ever look over some days and be like, maybe PK, maybe I can pull that off? Or what do you think about some of the outfits he's rocking there on the set of ESPN?
I can't pull it off, A. And B, he has probably multiple stylists picking up. And listen, and people want to be quick to judge with PK and Messincelli, and I'm sort of sitting in between them and separating. I'll say this. I'll be very frank with you guys. We needed PK. We needed PK on our set. When it was just me, Messincelli, we were missing something. We were missing some jam, some spice. And I think a part of that is, Messincelli came from the same era, so their opinions are very similar. PK was in the league last year. You know what I mean? He played in April, 2 years ago. He played against all these guys. He was in the Devil's Room with the Jack Hughes and those guys. So we needed the modern current player, I think. He provided the opposite perspective, I think. He was also a really good sport when we had all the Stanley Cups on one side of the set and, personality on the other side of the set. So, but he's been really good. He's a natural. I think hockey fans love listening to him, love watching him. And again, we needed some of that PK sauce, and he provided that for us. He was great.
Steve, I just wanted to ask you, Steve, about Scott Van Pelt. Now, it's great. Anytime there's a game on ESPN after the game ends, the guys go right on the SVP show.
Yes.
Does he like hockey? I mean, I love Scott Van Pelt. Yeah. And, man, how nice is his set, huh? Are the boys on ESPN jealous how nice his set is or what? Because that is a nice-looking set. So
he's a big deal, as you guys know. He's such a big deal. They built him his own set in Washington, D.C. He's not in Bristol with everybody else.
Yeah.
Van Peasy's a big deal, so he wanted to go home. And the company said, anything for you, Scott. And so listen, so he does love hockey. I'm glad you asked that. Yeah. He does love hockey. He does. He always mentions that in the postseason. And he is a diehard Washington Capitals fan come postseason hockey. So you're right. And I always think about that, too. That was the big difference, guys. You hit on it. When we did not have hockey, we would get to highlights on SportsCenter, maybe after the first commercial break or whatever it might be. But since we've gotten hockey and now Van Pelt's following, it's like Monday Night Football, right? The Monday Night Football ends, we got the star player, he's talking to Scott Van Pelt.
Yeah.
And now in hockey, it's the head coach or the players. You see Jack Eichel and Connor McDavid pops up with Van Pelt. And if you're the NHL, if you're in those league offices in Manhattan, you're like, you know what? This is what we wanted. This is what you get when you get ESPN. It's not just the games. Listen, you guys know there's only a certain way you can do the game itself. The 2-hour, 40-minute hockey game, there's only a certain amount of camera angles and commentary. But where ESPN separates itself, I think, is the before and the after, the pre and the post, and the promotion and the all-day conversation. Look, we're 24/7 sports, right? The other guys, they do, TNT does a great job, and they're a lot of fun. And I love all those guys, too. They're on one night a week. Right? They do an hour before, an hour after, and then they're in taped programming, outside of, the NBA and all that. So our place never ends. We're a factory. We're grinding. And so that's what you get when you get ESPN, I think. And that's a big part of our value.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, and what Scott's great at and what you're good at is the creative side of the questioning, right? In the interview with the hockey player. How have you over the years tried to get the most out of a young hockey guy who might be a little shy, might want to not cross any line, might not want to say the wrong thing, but how do you bring out his personality to show the world that hockey guys or this sport is magical? These guys are great, but how do you create that conversation with the kid to get him outside his comfort zone? Because that's what Shane and I do here on our podcast. We try to keep it light, but we want to show the personality side of things and not just that sort of cliche interview. How have you over the years been because you're great at it, but how do you get that best interview out of these guys?
Some of it is confidence, having been around like myself and having confidence that, you know what, if I ask an off goofball question or whatever, and I don't get a great answer, I can withstand that. You know what I mean? Like I'll get another crack at it, right? Someone younger in the industry might not be willing to take that risk. And with the risk comes some reward. You get something great out of them. And so listen, I'm glad you brought it up because I really care about the interviewing part. That's a real important part of my game. I want the guy to smile. I'm trying to get a reaction. Sometimes I know the answer to the question. I know all the cliches. I'm never going to ask him, hey, tell me about that goal. That's never coming out of my mouth. And my least favorite question is, what second period adjustments are you guys going to make? Like anybody could ask that question. You could have never you could be born yesterday and ask that question. You don't have to know anything about anything. So I'd like to show that I have some knowledge of what we're talking about and then ask it in a lighter way. And there's a time and a place though, right? Like we do those on ice interviews like prior to a playoff game, like that's not probably a time, to get these guys are focused. They're giving us their time. In between periods can be really rough. Butchie had a playoff game with the Oilers. He had Connor McDavid after a period, and it got a lot of attention, probably for the wrong reason. Connor was given 1 or 2 word answers. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Tough spot. So what do we do there, guys? Here's the greatest player in the game. We can't turn him down. We have to talk to him. And to me, I didn't have an issue with it. Butchie did his job, and Connor McDavid did his job. And so that showed me, you know what? Connor's not playing around. He's all business. He's locked in. He's focused on the game. This is the playoffs. And so I had no issue with that. In the regular season, we're looking for guys who want to play a little bit. Marchand in Boston is great. He's always good for something. It obviously helps if you have a relationship with these guys. Yeah. And so, PK has played with these guys. He can ask a question, but you can see like when Messercelli asks a question, these guys lock up. Oh my God, it's Mark Messier asking me something. Now Messier say, hey, I love the way you play this game. Oh my God, Messier just complimented me. And you see them shut down, right? And then PK is asking them about the outfit or what they're going to eat post game or what bar they're going to. And so that's it. So it's a fine line. There is a mix, but I care greatly about that piece of our business. And that's probably what I devote most of my attention to going into a game. I always want to know who's the player we're talking to so I can start thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, and we all love Connor McDavid. We love the way he plays. Uppy knows him from going to camp with him. I don't know him personally. He's probably a great person. But there was one time this year in a regular season game where he came on with SVP after, and he didn't give SVP anything. And I'm thinking, come on, Connor, man. You're on national TV on ESPN down here in the States. And for me, Steve, if Connor doesn't want to give it, give me somebody else. Like I don't necessarily want the best player in the world. I want the best guy for that spot with SVP, in my opinion.
So post game's different, okay? Post game's different. You've obviously won, okay, because you're on the show. Yeah. So you think you could be a little lighter, a little looser there. But listen, if that's not his personality. Yep. But you don't know, Obi, right? You don't know until the interview's over. Like maybe SVP comes up with something clever and gets Connor to crack a smile. Then it's TV gold, Yeah. So you just never know. McDavid's a hard guy to turn down. For sure. And I don't blame him. Like we're not trying to change people's personalities here. You are who you are, but it would be helpful to have somebody who's willing to say something. And every PR, these PR guys do a great job too, right? They really do. They got a tough job. Like the poor guy in Edmonton, like he knows every intermission, every pregame, every postgame, people want McDavid. You just can't wear Connor out. It's not fair that way. So, they need to know who are the guys who will give you something, who got a little sparkle in their eye, who's willing to crack a smile and crack a joke with you and tell a story. And so you try to find a happy medium there.
I would tell the guy in Edmonton, just make Connor sure he's fresh for Scott Van Pelt. The rest of the guys in Canada, now he doesn't have to do it. But make sure you're ready to
give him a Labatt Blue right off the
Make
him have a beer before he comes on or something.
Yeah. Steve, I wanted to ask you, you touched on the production of a hockey game, and I think all three of us can admit the hockey's better live, right? Anytime a person goes to a hockey game, it's unfortunately at times TV doesn't do it justice. I guess what I'm asking, in your production meetings in the off season, are they asking you guys for different camera angles, maybe certain events that are made around television? Like, is there any talk of always trying to make it better on television, I guess is what I'm asking?
Nonstop.
Yeah.
Always trying to innovate, always trying to grow. And again, there's just so many ways to do it. Like how, we get crushed for this stuff. Like we tried, I don't know, maybe it was last season. We tried on the power play, the camera angle from above the goalie. So in essence, you're seeing out what the goalie is seeing, or at least that's what, and people bitched and moaned about that. Then we put the name tags on the guys, right? Only on the power play. So, the fans could see who has the puck. On the offensive players, people bitched about that. You're taking up too much of the screen. So, listen, we know you're not going to please everybody, but ESPN is always trying to push the boundaries. We're trying to take chances, be innovative. But again, there's only a finite way of doing these things. For one, it's a small – I'd like to see the guys take the helmets off for shootout. Like, to me, that would be a really easy one.
Yeah.
And I just think that would enhance the enjoyment of the game. Some people don't like shootout even to begin with. But I think, the guys want to see – all these guys look the same for the most part, right, with the half shield on and all that. So, but anyway, those kinds of things – sometimes it is aesthetics, right? We're trying to look for something. We're always trying to enhance the audio, mic the player, mic the coach, try to get something out of the coaches in those in-game interviews. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But yes, we're always trying, always thinking of new ideas. If you guys have any, please feel free to share them with us too.
Well, I like the buckets off in the shootout, Steve. You got my vote there. I'll sign that petition, fella.
And by the way, something went viral this week. We talked about it this morning with Dana White commenting about the NHL with the Nelk boys and just saying that these guys are old in the way they think and they don't understand the youth and the audience. And coming from Dana White, who's actually, probably the most successful CEO of any sports franchise business now, you got to kind of listen to that, right? Because he understands the youth.
I think we have to grow. We have to evolve. I think they're trying that. How do you keep look what baseball did. Baseball, the most traditional of all the sports by far, right? They got a pitch clock now. What? Right? I mean, they made the bases bigger. You can only throw over to first base a couple times. Listen, we're 2 years away, guys, from robots calling balls and strikes.
Yeah, crazy, Steve.
So if baseball can do it, then I think hockey can. And hockey has made advancements. We got to move in a couple other directions, I think, still, But you're right. You got to get younger. You need the audience to be younger. You need to continue to grow the game. And I think that starts with more young kids playing hockey, quite frankly. And that circles back to Vegas, right? Rinks are popping up in the desert left and right. Kids are playing hockey out there. They'll have hockey fans there forever now.
Just talking about baseball, I haven't been to a baseball game yet, but my buddies are telling me, remember you used to go get a beer, you come back and be like 2 hitters later? Now you go grab a beer, take a leak, you come back, it's like 2 innings are over, I guess. So I'm interested to see what that's all about.
It's good. I just went on Father's Day. I took my dad, I took my kids, and the game moves. Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah. It's weird seeing a clock behind the batter, but the game moves, and what they wanted was more action. You can't even shift anymore, right? You can't have 3 guys on the right side of the infield anymore.
Thank God.
So right. So they've made a lot of changes to get more action, and I think baseball shaved off. I think it's roughly a half hour per game this season, which is a win for everybody concerned. Yeah.
Steve, I got a question. Have you ever been part of voting for, say, the Conn Smythe as as a media guy? Have you ever had a vote at the Conn Smythe? I think the list came out, Obes, that we saw, and then we were shocked, and we're going to talk about it today, about how the great ones just not involved in picking the best.
Messier, I think 99 for TNT, and Mess probably should have had a vote this year on the Conn Smythe.
Yeah,
right?
That's kind of what I brought up. But have you ever, ever been part of that or no?
No. No, and I'm not really sure exactly how they come up with the crew that had it. Our Emily Kaplan, I know, had a vote. It's like X amount of writers, there are broadcasters, I think, involved. I'm really not sure, but it's a small group. It might be 18, 20 people. I'd like to see it expand. I get to vote on the GM of the year. That's a media award, so I was pretty pleased about that. But I would take that with great responsibility, great respect. Like, that's a really big deal.
For sure.
To be able to vote for the Conn Smythe. And that's just another place where hockey has it right? The most valuable player of the postseason, all 4 rounds, not just in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, hey, if you guys can get me a vote somehow, I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah, you got our vote. Yeah. And then on the voting side, Hockey Hall of Fame inductees this week. Is there anyone that folks, that my Instagram has been talking about a lot this week, but is there anyone that you've watched over the years that you think deserves a crack at this? Some of the names are Keith Kachuk,
Big Walt,
McGillney,
Yep.
but some of the guys that have been, poking their head around but haven't got in. Is there anyone you'd like to see in?
How about Pat Verbeek?
Pat Verbeek.
Wow.
There we go.
There you go.
500 goals. And isn't he in the top? There's this group with him and like Shanahan in terms of goals and penalty minutes. It's a rare group, a certain select criteria there. But I think Verbeek's got great numbers. He's got longevity. I'm not sure he ever won the individual awards, which is what you really need there. I think everybody knows Big Walt's stats because we talked to Matthew about it. 500 goals, 1,000 points. I give a nod.
Verbeek's got 500 goals and over 1,000 points. That's usually cash money.
Yeah. And
So there you go. So that's the Kachuk argument. So Verbeek and Kachuk are both in that group, right?
So does Pierre Turgeon's got 500. He's got 1,300 points.
Yeah.
He's never got in. And then
Bertie Nichols, 1,200 points.
he had good hair too, didn't he?
So to me, criteria for the Hall of Fame, and it's in all sports.
Yeah.
It's got to be a dominant player of his era, okay? And I think one of the ways to think about that is, did you game plan? I actually had this same conversation with Rick Tocchet in Vegas during the Stanley Cup Finals. I'm not sure how the Hall of Fame even came up, but I said, did you have to specifically game plan against this guy, whatever position, right? Yep. And to me, that's one of the criteria for being a Hall of Famer. A dominant player of his era, did you have to game plan specifically against this guy? Are you watching his film and figuring out, hey, I got to have these defensemen on the ice, these forwards? And so, that's what I'd like to see.
And Steve, you're so right on the personal awards because that's what it comes down to a lot. Now, to me, and it's the Hockey Hall of Fame, right? So international play is involved as well, too. But in such a team sport, when I look at guys that have won multiple Stanley Cups and Conn Smythe, like in my opinion, when it comes to Hall of Fame, that should matter. But unfortunately not. It's more about personal. And like you said, their numbers, 500 goals, 1,000 points, and did they win the Hart or whatever?
And Stanley Cups, and that's kind of how we started, right? You could be a great player, just never get there. So Keith Kachuk never even played in the Stanley. Forget about winning the Cup. He never even got to play in a Stanley Cup final. So, that certainly hurts his cause or his case there. And that's not necessarily on him, right? You play for a long time. You put up great stats, some individual trophies there, and it just doesn't work out. So
Big Walt's got 538 goals and 1,000 points. I want Big Walt in there. Maybe I'm biased now because I got to know him, but God, that guy likes a nice beer and a cigar too. He's got my vote if I had one.
And how about the big can? His big can standing in front of the net. Like, you couldn't move that guy, right? Bad accent, the whole thing. He's great. That's the essence of a beauty, right? Big Walt.
Great question.
Yeah, talking about that World Cup, it was him and
what year was that?
Him and Lemieux got that
he
scrap,
fought Lemieux,
right? That was
Lemieux.
A good scrap.
Great scrap. That World Cup, 96?
I was going to say 96 in Montreal.
Yeah. The Americans beat us. Yeah, that was the World Cup I remember.
Yeah.
Now, we're not going to get that. We're not going to get McDavid fighting fucking Eichel or anything. But I wouldn't mind them just to see them play 5-on-5 against each other.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like, what are we waiting for here, boys? But
those World Cups were great, yeah.
Steve, I want to ask you, first time I met you was on the set of Entourage with my boy Kevin Connolly. Were you a fan of the show? Did you know Doug Allen? How did that work out for you? Because that's when the first time I met you.
Yeah, so I'm in a pretty cool high school Hall of Fame. I went to Belmore Kennedy, which is on Long Island, and I got Adam Schefter.
Oh, nice.
Doug Allen, who was the creator of Entourage, and my boy from Wheels Up, Kenny Dichter, who created Wheels Up. Yeah. So the four of us, we might even gone in on the same night. Shefty and I definitely did. So that's the only Hall of Fame, by the way, I'll ever be in. But so that's how I know Doug. So we knew a lot of the same people growing up. And I got to meet some of the cast members as well. They've always been super cool off the set, and Kevin Connolly's a big Islanders fan, right? Kevin Dillon's a great dude. Got to play some cards with him one time in Atlantic City. And so that was a great show. I even love the movie, and always talk about, bringing that back for a second set. And so was that Ronda Rousey the day I saw you?
Yeah, we were at that old boxing gym in Hollywood.
Yeah, that was really cool. And so Turtle's trying to just take her out on a date.
Yeah. He broke her arm. Hey, I'll tell you what, Steve, I got a new appreciation for actors after that. We were there for 8 hours. Me and Lupo were in the back of the scene, and Collins warned us. Collins said, hey, boys, it's like if I'm going to be the water boy. The first period's exciting, but if it goes to 4 OT, I want to get the fuck out of here. It was in the movie for 30 seconds. We were there for 8 hours.
Yeah, it's those This is Sports Center commercials where all the mascots and the athletes, they all come to Bristol. Like, same deal. Some of those are 15 seconds or 30 seconds, and they're 8-hour days. 8-hour days. It's every take from every angle and all these extras and running it back. And I've been fortunate to have a couple cameos and a couple of movies and just buddies that put me in some stuff. And the same thing, like it's, I just didn't want to blow my line, but I have to do it 25, 30 times. Then they go back and they look at all. And it seems like a massive waste of money and resources, but that's Hollywood. And then it comes out great on the big screen.
Updog asked you this earlier, 30 years you've been there. Like, did you ever imagine what ESPN has turned? Like, could you ever vision it, how big it is now and how many channels they have and all the sports they cover? Like you said, buddy, it's 24/7. Like, anytime I'm in a pinch, I go to ESPN Plus. I know I can watch something,
We appreciate that. So when I got there in 93, it was really just ESPN. There was no radio, no .com, no ESPN2. I mean, it was really just that one channel, the main channel. And so, now we have a fancy LA studio and all that, and helps with the time zones. But so my first job at ESPN, I was on the 2 a.m. Sports Center, 2 a.m. Eastern, which was live in Bristol, Connecticut. So, and it was only a 30-minute show, but that was my shift, 2 a.m. to 2:30.
The graveyard.
By the time I got back, I'm 4 a.m. and I'm sleeping until noon, and it's messed me up 30 years later. I'm still not a morning person, and so I still like to be out at night, but again, there was no training ground. Like nowadays, they ease the kids in. You come be a broadcaster. Hey, we'll put you on news first. We'll transition you over to 2. We'll put you on .com and Plus. And so, I was sort of thrown right in there in the fire there with, Keith Oldman and Dan Patrick and those guys. And so, and obviously, best decision other than having my kids, best decision I ever made was leaving New York City. And I really didn't want to come. I was as provincial as anybody ever. I was a New York City kid. I was only about the New York City teams. I didn't care about what was going on outside of New York City. And but the opportunity offered to me was too great to pass up. And it was obviously ESPN's been so good to me.
Steve, do you think there's some room for some more secondary hockey programming on one of those channels, or what? You think they can slide a Missin Curfew show in there? Or, we got the point. We got you guys. I don't know. I think maybe
looking for a little West Coast action.
Yeah, we could show up to that LA studio and cover.
We definitely have space. I know a guy who knows a guy, and I can put in a good word in for you guys.
There we go.
What are you guys drinking on the set? I'm not sure we go for that. Though. What are you guys drinking
blue
right
lights,
now?
Blue light.
Don't worry.
Yeah, blue lights.
These can slide down real quick, and they'll be gone. So
I'll be able to drink those before the first commercial break. Don't worry.
You gotta have a Mickey Mouse juice box there, and then maybe Disney folks will let you in.
Exactly.
Hey, Steve, man, thank you so much for doing this. You're the best, buddy. Maybe we'll get you on before the start of the season and get your Stanley Cup predictions. We'll give you a couple months to mull over it, see the free agent. Maybe we'll get you on, and we'll all take our predictions, bud.
Hey, I'm a fan of you guys. I've been watching the show, and I appreciate you having me on. It took you long enough to get me, but no slight there. I get it. I understand. You got a lot of important people to talk to, and so thanks for having me on.
Up dog, thanks to Steve Levy. Absolute beauty. Guy team. Can you play on my team? He said he loves Vegas. He said he doesn't need a reason to go to Vegas. I'm like,
I bet you'd want to play for Team Canada. I know he's a New Yorker / Boston. He talks a little bit about his Boston boys, but if we asked him, hey, are you on our squad? I think he's on our squad.
Yeah, you can see how much he loved the World Cup back in the day. That World Cup was special.
Mm-hmm.
Canada-US fights. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I think I said it on the pre-show, but I love what he does for the game. ESPN, he's a big reason why that show is what it is. He carries it. He's great. PK on his right. He had Mess and, Chelly just got let go, but he had those two beauties and Hall of Famers on his left. love the guy, and it was nice to get to know him. I hope we bump into him somewhere this summer and maybe tee it up with the guy.
Yeah, I'd like to take him out for dinner in LA maybe. Eh?
Yeah,
Hollywood night. He seems like a Hollywood guy.
I bet she's got some more stories that he just wasn't able to tell us on here.
Take him to Craig's maybe for a little chicky parm or something, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Seems like an
old fashioned. What do you think? He's an old fashioned guy?
One can only hope. But Updog, this is a wrap pretty much for the season for us. So obviously thanks to you, buddy. 3 years we've been doing this. Fuck, it's worked out pretty good for us. But thanks to the listeners. Without our fans, we got nothing. So thanks to them. Hall Pass Media is off to the Summer League. Check it out if you like basketball. And we got some good off-season content coming out. Curfew calls. Me and you will jump on the odd, maybe Zoom here through July and then maybe back in August. But it's been a fun year, fella.
It has. And, and to follow on that, our sponsors, thank you to DraftKings. Thank you to Cannadips, who've been with us since day one.
Blue Light, baby.
Blue Light, baby.
Cannadips,
our friends that were with us, Lifeforce, promo code Curfew, jump on that, stay young, especially in the summer, you gotta have that beach bod. And TaylorMade, our friends at TaylorMade for the absolute gear that we've been slinging to all our guests. And to our, our prize winners. Thanks for jumping in on that. But again, Casey and our friends at TaylorMade, you guys are the best.
Yeah, every NHL guest that we've had here on the playoffs, they sent him a brand new Stealth 2 driver. So the boys out there in the National League are going to be hitting it long and straight this summer. But great partnership with TaylorMade. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can keep building it because Updog, as we know, golf and hockey go hand in hand, fellas. So
that's right.
TaylorMade, thank you guys.
And then our post sponsors, you know who you are, Good Life, all the people that have been through it. And then G4, we're looking sharp.
Yeah.
G4, thanks for the gear.
Going to be looking good on the course, but it was a fun year. We will have stuff rolling out. And like I said, if anything happens throughout the course of summer and me and you want to jump on the old computer, we'll do it old school style. And then we're off to Ireland at the start of August. And then when we get back, maybe we'll jump back in here and see what's
Ireland
going on.
For a little piss up.
Fuck, it's going to be good drinking that Irish whiskey.
Yeah, get the body ready.
Max Binger, Hall Pass, thanks for everything, boys. It's been a fun year. That was Missin Curfew.
Fellas.